I want to now show you Datalist. Datalist is one of the newer form elements available. Because of this, browser support at present is a little bit more limited at the time of recording. We can see this by going over to a site called caniuse.com. And all we need to do is type in the Datalist at the very top here, and then scroll down and we can see a list of the supported browsers. So we can see by the colour that the later versions of Chrome are green and it's fully supported. However, some of the earlier versions of Safari and also Safari on iOS, it's not supported. If we take a look at Internet Explorer and also Edge and Firefox 2, we can see that the light green indicates some partial support, so we need to be careful when using Datalist. However, it is useful to know, as it will be a good option to use once browser support catches up. Datalist can be used in place of a select box from the last video, where the select box is a drop down to select an option. Datalist is more of a text box where the user can type into, and then we can see some suggestions below it. If we go over to the finished version and into the contact page, this is a Datalist here. If we click on the drop down, we still have all the options that we've seen in the last video, which we can select, or we can use this as a search box and we can filter down if we have lots of different options. So let's begin over in Visual Studio Code. I'm going to comment out this full div that we added in the last video. So this is a div which surrounds all the select box. If you're using Visual Studio Code, you should be simply able to highlight and press Command or Control +//, and this will comment out this section for us. If not, we'll just need to type in manually the opening section and the closing section below it. So then let's go ahead and construct our div just like we did before, and then we can add a label. Label again is going to have the for attribute of subject and then subject inside of here. So we are basically just constructing the same thing as we did for the select box. So this time we add a input with the type of text. So the reason we're adding a text input is to display this section here so the user can type into it. And let's give this an ID of subject, again to match this attribute here. Then the placeholder at the very end of enter your subject. And close that. So this is just a simple text input to begin, so the user has a text box to type in. Then below this we can add our data list with the opening and closing tags for this element. Then we can add a option inside of here. So this only has the opening tag, and we also add a value attribute of returns. And then let's copy and paste this in a few more times. So next we can add the faulty item. And just line this all up so it's more readable. So faulty item, and then the third one is delivery. The fourth one was order tracking. The fifth one was advice, and the final one was other. Oops, so I'll just change that to other and then save. So over to the browser, hit reload and go over to the subject. So let's start to add some text inside of here. So if we type inside the input, we don't see any of the options appearing below like we've seen in the final version. This is because we have a plain text input and also we have a data list below it, but we have not yet linked them together. To link them, first we need to add an ID to the data list. Just like all IDs, this goes in the opening tag. So the ID, and we'll call this the subjects. Then tell the text input above which list it connects to with the list attribute. And of course, this needs to be subjects to match this ID below. Give that a save and let's test this. Hit refresh. And we also see this drop down arrow appearing. So this looks like it's working. Let's try delivery, advice, and that all seems to be working. So this is how we use the data list. Again, do be careful when using and check browser compatibility if you were looking to include this inside of a project. But I do think it's a nice form element and especially useful to filter down a large group of options. This is all the form inputs now on display in our website. We just need a way to submit this form, and as you may guess, we do this with a submit button. Submit is also an input, but this time we add the type of submit. So let's add this right at the end of our form. So just above this closing form tag, we can wrap this in a div 2. Then add our input with the type of submit. Give that a save. And let's check this out. And of course, this is right at the bottom when we have our submit button just here. This is a button which will actually submit the data in the form to the server. Remember though, this will not work at the moment because HTML just displays the content, but we'll come back to submitting forms later in the course when we're more familiar with back-end web development. But one thing you will notice once we clicked on the submit button before, we were taken back to the same page, and if you look at the end of this URL, we have name equals and then blank, and email equals with no value, and message equals again with no value. So this is because we added the name of name, email and message over in the HTML. So this was just here, so name, email and message. So this is why we added the name attribute before, and this is the data which will be sent to the server. So let's just give that a quick try. Actually, if we added Chris and then test@test.com and then message here, if we were to go down and click on submit, we'll then see this information is now in the top bar. So we have name equals Chris, email equals test, and message equals to our text, which we just added in. So we'll just leave that for now, and of course we'll come back to that later on when we know more about how back-end development works. We could also replace this button with a HTML button element. This also takes a type equals submit. So down at the very bottom, our input just here. I'm just going to comment this out, and then we can add the button element just like that with the type of submit. And this is something which you'll see quite often too. And since it has the type of submit, it will also submit the form just like this input will do above. If we save and check this out in the browser, it looks a little different. We just have a plain button with no text. We see no text of submit. This is because, like other elements with an opening and closing tag, we need to add our text inside. So between these, we can add the text of submit. And then we see the text inside the button. This is actually one of the main differences when using an input or a button in this way. Inputs have default text of submit, but with buttons, you're in control of the text inside the button. So it can be anything which you want, such as send message, and then we'll see that reflected in the browser. For now, I'm going to comment out this button and keep in place the input, which we had from before, again with command or control and a // to uncomment that out. You may also come across a reset button placed next to the submit like this. So rather than the type of submit, you may also see the type of reset. And this is used to clear any of the text from the input which we add. So if we had some text inside of here, we could click on reset, and this will clear all the form inputs back to how they were. This is the contents of our form now completed, but in the next video I want to show you a few more useful types of inputs.